I'm Paige, 32, and literally last weekend, my rep as the family's supposed failure? Yeah, it totally backfired. The quiet pride I'd been holding together by swallowing my siblings' shade for years, it blew up into a full-on family showdown at our so-called happy reunion at Mom and Dad's old house. My brother Ethan, always the golden boy, demanded I step up for our parents' care, acting like I had nothing to offer. When I pushed back, the room went dead silent. "You're dragging us all down, Paige," he barked, with my sister Lila nodding like she'd rehearsed it. But here's the tea: their judgment didn't break me, it lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. A quick note: this story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Guest Stories. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative work. Now, back to the story. I pulled into the gravel driveway of my childhood home in upstate New York, the tires of my rented compact crunching louder than I wanted. The house looked smaller than I remembered, white paint peeling at the edges, the porch swing creaking in the late summer breeze. My stomach knotted as I gripped the steering wheel, staring at the front door. This wasn't just a family meeting about Mom and Dad's future. It was a battlefield I'd avoided for years. I'd driven 5 hours from the city, not because I wanted to, but because Mom's voice on the phone had trembled, saying, "We need you here, Paige." How could I say no to that? I grabbed my duffel bag from the passenger seat, my fingers brushing the worn canvas. No designer labels, no flashy accessories, just me, Paige Harper, the sibling who never made it. My brother Ethan, 35, a corporate lawyer with a waterfront condo, and my sister Lila, 29, a hedge fund darling, had spent years building their empires of status. Me? I'd been hustling in tech, coding in cramped apartments, pitching to investors who barely glanced my way. They didn't know I'd built something massive, something that could buy their fancy lives 10 times over. I'd let them think I was scraping by, too stubborn to correct their pitying looks. Why? Because proving them wrong on their terms felt like losing on mine. Stepping out, I adjusted my faded jeans and smoothed my hair, catching my reflection in the car window, dark circles under my eyes from late night's coding, but a glint of something else. Defiance, maybe. I walked up the porch steps, each creak under my sneakers reminding me of summers spent here, back when we were just kids, before money and status carved lines between us. The door was ajar, voices spilling out, Ethan's deep laugh, Lila's sharp tone. I paused, hand on the knob, my pulse quickening. They were already talking about me. I could feel it. Not as an equal, but as the problem to be solved. Inside, the living room smelled of Mom's lavender candles, but the warmth stopped there. Ethan stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, his tailored blazer screaming money. Lila perched on the couch, scrolling her phone, her manicured nails clicking. Mom and Dad sat at the dining table, their faces tight with worry. "Paige," Mom jumped up, her hug too tight, like she was apologizing for something. Dad nodded, his eyes soft but distant. Ethan barely glanced over. "You're late," he said, checking his watch. Lila smirked, not looking up. "Traffic, I guess? Not like you had anywhere else to be." I swallowed the sting, setting my bag down with a thud. "Good to see you too," I said, keeping my voice even. Ethan launched into the agenda. Mom and Dad's care, the costs, the logistics, like he was running a board meeting. Lila chimed in, tossing out numbers like they were pocket change. I sat across from them, my hands clasped tight in my lap, feeling the weight of their assumptions. They didn't ask about my life, my work. To them, I was still the scrappy kid who messed around with computers, not a player in their world of wealth. But as Ethan droned on about nursing homes and budgets, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my COO. "Deal's closing tomorrow. $50 million valuation confirmed." My heart skipped. I'd built that from nothing, from sleepless nights and scrapped code. They had no idea. I glanced at Ethan, his jaw set like he owned the room, and Lila, her eyes flicking to me with that same old pity. I could have spoken up right then, dropped the truth like a grenade. But I didn't. Not yet. I wanted them to dig their hole deeper, to feel the weight of their words before I turned the tables. The spark in me grew hotter. This wasn't just about money, it was about respect, about years of being erased. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers tapping a slow rhythm on the table. Let them talk, let them underestimate me one last time. tomorrow, I'd show them who I really was. And it wasn't going to be quiet. As Ethan wrapped up his monologue on the realistic costs of in-home care for mom and dad, gesturing with his expensive pen like it was a conductor's baton, my mind drifted back to where this all started. Not here, in this stuffy dining room with its faded wallpaper and the faint smell of Dad's pipe tobacco lingering from years ago, but further back. I stared at the grain of the wooden table, my thumb tracing an old scratch I'd made as a kid with a fork during one of our family discussions. The memories flooded in, unbidden but sharp, each one a reminder of how I'd become invisible in my own home. It wasn't one big moment that did it. It was 1,000 small cuts, starting from when we were teenagers and building like interest on a bad loan. I remembered my high school graduation, clear as if it happened yesterday. I'd busted my ass to graduate top of my class, even winning a regional coding competition that got me a scholarship to a decent state university. The award ceremony was at the school auditorium, lights bright and the air buzzing with proud parents. I stood on stage in my cap and gown holding that shiny plaque, my name announced over the speakers, Paige Harper, for excellence in computer science innovation. My project was a simple app that helped local farmers track crop yields. Nothing world-changing, but it worked, and it mattered to me. When I stepped down, heart-pounding, I scanned the crowd for my family. Mom clapped politely, Dad gave a thumbs up, but Ethan? He was checking his phone, probably texting about his own acceptance to that fancy pre-law program. Leela, still in middle school then, rolled her eyes and whispered something to Mom that made her shush her. Later that night, at the family dinner we had at home, steak and potatoes my favorite, Ethan dominated the conversation. Got my full ride to Columbia, he announced, fork waving triumphantly, gonna be rubbing elbows with future senators. Dad beamed, slapping him on the back so hard his chair scooted. That's my boy, making the Harpers proud. Mom piled extra mashed potatoes on his plate, her eyes shining. Lila chimed in about her straight A's in math, hinting at her future in finance. Me? I sat there, plaque tucked under my chair because there was no space on the table amid the chaos. When I tried to bring it up, saying, "Hey, my app actually got downloaded by a few farms already," Ethan laughed it off. "That's cute, Paige, but let's talk real success. Law firms don't hire coders." Lila snickered and Mom just said, "We're proud of all of you," but her gaze lingered on Ethan longer. Dad nodded absently, already asking Ethan about dorm life. I clenched my napkin in my lap, the fabric twisting under my fingers, feeling that first real sting of being sidelined. My achievement? It evaporated like steam from the potatoes. Fast forward a few years to college breaks, when I'd come home with stories of interning at a startup in the city. I'd coded an algorithm that optimized delivery routes for a small e-commerce site, saving them thousands in fuel costs. It was my first taste of real impact. I'd stayed up nights debugging, chugging energy drinks until my hands shook. One Thanksgiving, I tried sharing it around the turkey. "Guys, this could scale big," I said, passing the cranberry sauce. Ethan, fresh from his first year at a big firm, cut in with, "Speaking of scaling, I just closed a deal for a client worth millions." He leaned back, arms spread wide like he owned the table. Lila, now in business school, jumped on it. "And I got an internship at Goldman Sachs. Real money moves." Dad raised his glass. "To the power duo." Mom hugged them both. My story? Buried under the clink of glasses. I poked at my stuffing, fork scraping the plate, the sound drowned out by their laughter. When I pressed, saying, "But tech is booming, my code's being used right now," Lila waved it off. "Paige, not everyone can handle the corporate world. Stick to your hobbies." Ethan nodded sagely, like he was dispensing wisdom. I bit my lip, tasting blood, and excused myself to the kitchen, where I gripped the counter until my knuckles whitened, staring out at the dark backyard. Invisible again. Then there was the Christmas 5 years ago, right after I'd launched my first freelance gig, a platform connecting freelancers with gigs in tech. It wasn't huge, but it paid my rent and then some, and I'd even hired a couple of friends part-time. I brought printouts of user testimonials to show them, folded neatly in my bag. The living room was decked out, tree lights twinkling, stockings hung. Ethan arrived in his new BMW honking like a king. "Bonus season hit hard," he bragged, tossing keys on the side table. Lila showed off her engagement ring from her banker fiancé, the diamond catching every light. Wedding's going to be epic. Destination, of course. Mom fussed over them, Dad poured scotch and toasted their bright futures. I waited for a lull, then pulled out my papers. Look, my site's got over 1,000 users now. Silence. Then Ethan chuckled. Freelancing? That's unstable, sis. You should get a real job. Lila examined her nails. Yeah, we're talking stability here. Dad changed the subject to Ethan's promotion. I folded the papers back, creases sharp under my fingers, and stuffed them away. My chest tightened as I forced a smile, joining the toast but feeling like a ghost at my own family's party. These moments stacked up, each one reinforcing the narrative they'd built. Ethan and Lila were the successes, the ones with wealth and status. Me, the dreamer, the struggler. I'd stopped sharing after a while, letting their assumptions fester. Why fight for scraps of attention? But sitting here now, as Lila added her 2 cents about affordable options for Mom and Dad, implying I'd be a burden, those memories fueled the fire in my gut. I shifted in my seat, my foot tapping under the table, the rhythm quickening. They celebrated Ethan's cases and Lila's deals with parties and gifts, but my wins dismissed like junk mail. I glanced at Mom, her hands wringing a napkin, and Dad, staring at his empty plate. They let it happen, too scared to rock the boat. But me? I was done being invisible. My fingers curled into a fist in my lap, nails digging into my palm. The past wasn't just history, it was the foundation of what was coming next, and it was going to hurt them more than it ever hurt me. As Lila wrapped up her spiel on the practical division of responsibilities, her voice dripping with that faux concern, like she was doing me a favor by not expecting much, my mind snapped to the one thing that had kept me going through all this. The secret I'd built in the shadows. I stared at the salt shaker in the center of the table, its crystal facets catching the overhead light, and twisted it slowly between my fingers, the cool glass grounding me. Ethan was nodding along, his pen tapping the notepad where he'd jotted down figures that excluded me entirely, but I wasn't really hearing them anymore. Instead, the memories of my aha moment rushed in, vivid and raw, like a lifeline pulling me out of this suffocating room. It wasn't just a business idea, it was the spark that ignited when their dismissals hit rock bottom, and I'd decided to build something they couldn't ignore, even if I kept it hidden at first. It started 4 years ago, in a dingy coffee shop in Brooklyn, the kind with sticky tables and overbrewed espresso that burned your throat. I just hung up from a family call, Ethan bragging about his latest bonus, Lila planning her luxury wedding, and me mumbling about freelance stuff to avoid the pity. I slammed my phone down, the screen cracking slightly at the edge, and felt hot tears prick my eyes. Why did I keep letting them define me? I grabbed a napkin, scribbling furiously. What if there was a platform that connected underrated tech talent directly to startups, bypassing the gatekeepers who favored Ivy League pedigrees? It hit me like a jolt. The aha that made my hand tremble, ink smearing as I sketched the basic wireframe. No more begging for scraps. I'd create a network where skills spoke louder than status. I remember wiping my face with my sleeve, the rough fabric scratching my cheek, and whispering to myself, "This is it, this changes everything." The barista eyed me curiously as I ordered another coffee, my voice steadier now, but inside excitement bubbled like the foam on my latte. From there, the struggle kicked in hard, testing every ounce of resolve I had. I holed up in my tiny apartment, the one with peeling wallpaper and a leaky faucet that dripped relentlessly, like a metronome counting down my doubts. Nights blurred into days. I'd code for hours, my fingers flying over the keyboard, only to hit a bug that crashed the whole system. One particularly brutal week, after pitching to a potential investor who laughed me off. Cute idea, but the market saturated. I hurled my mouse across the room, watching it skitter under the couch. My back ached from hunching over the screen, and I subsisted on ramen and energy bars, crumbs scattering across my desk like confetti from a failed party. I clawed the couch cushions aside to retrieve the mouse, my nails digging into the fabric, frustration boiling over into sobs that echoed in the empty space. Why was I doing this? For validation from people who never gave it? No. I gripped the mouse tighter, plugging it back in with shaking hands. This was for me to prove I wasn't the failure they saw. I refined the algorithm, tweaking lines of code until my eyes burned, integrating AI to match freelancers with gigs based on real skill metrics, not resumes. The breakthroughs came in fits and starts, each one a small victory that fueled the next. I landed my first user, a coder friend who beta tested and brought in 5 more. Revenue trickled in, enough to upgrade my laptop, the new keys clicking satisfyingly under my fingers. But the real grind was scaling. Cold emailing hundreds of startups, my inbox filling with rejections that I printed out and pinned to a motivation wall, their harsh words staring back as I worked. One night, after a 3 a.m. debug session, I collapsed on my bed, the springs creaking under me, and stared at the ceiling fan whirring lazily. Doubt crept in. Maybe Ethan was right. Maybe stability was in suits and salaries. But I rolled over, grabbing my phone to check the app's dashboard. 10 new signups that day. I punched the air weakly, a grin splitting my face despite the exhaustion. I kept it secret from the family, dodging their questions with vague, "I'm managing" responses during holidays, my voice tight as I changed the subject. Why share? They'd twist it into something small like always. Then came the tipping point, the massive success that solidified everything. About a year in, a viral thread on a tech forum praised the platform. Finally, a site that values code over connections, and users flooded in. I hired my first employee, a sharp developer named Alex, and we moved to a co-working space, the hum of other entrepreneurs energizing me. Investments followed. A seed round from an angel who believed in the mission, then a Series A that valued us at $10 million. I remember signing the papers, pen hovering before pressing down, my hand steady but my heart racing. The money hit the account, and I sat back in my chair, wheels squeaking as I spun slowly, absorbing the reality. We'd hit 1 million users, revenue in the 7 figures, and I was quietly a multimillionaire on paper. But I didn't splurge. No fancy car, no announcements. I upgraded my apartment subtly, bought better coffee, but kept the facade for the family. Let them think I was struggling. It protected me from their judgments turning to jealousy or demands. Back in the present, as Dad cleared his throat awkwardly, breaking the tension with a question about dessert, I released the salt shaker, my fingerprints smudged on the glass. The secret wasn't just a business, it was my armor, forged in those lonely nights and triumphant dawns. Ethan glanced at me, his brow furrowing like he sensed something off, but I met his eyes evenly, my jaw set. The struggle had been intense, sleepless weeks, emotional craters. But the success, it was mine, hidden and massive, waiting for the right moment. I flexed my fingers under the table, the ache from past typing sessions a faint echo. They had no clue what I'd built, how it'd grown from that coffee shop scribble into an empire. But soon, they'd see. The internal fire steadied me, this realization, reliving the journey right here amid their condescension, made me unbreakable. I wasn't just surviving their narrative, I'd rewritten my own. Mom pushed back from the table with a soft scrape of her chair, her hands fluttering like she was trying to smooth over the edges of the conversation. "How about some coffee before we dive deeper?" she suggested, her voice a little too bright, as if caffeine could fix the undercurrents swirling in the room. Dad murmured agreement, standing slowly, his knees cracking audibly. Ethan checked his phone, probably scheduling his next power move, while Lila smoothed her skirt, her eyes darting to me with that mix of irritation and dismissal. I nodded faintly, using the break to step into the kitchen, the linoleum cool under my socks as I leaned against the counter, gripping the edge until the formica bit into my palms. The family meeting had only just begun, but the real meat, the dinner where they'd lay out their plans and my supposed inadequacies, loomed like a storm cloud. And here I was, on the eve of the biggest deal of my life, reluctantly armoring up for what was coming. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, insistent this time, and I fished it out, glancing at the screen under the harsh fluorescent light. Another message from Alex, my COO. "Investors are locked in, signing at 9 a.m. tomorrow. You're about to be officially loaded." I thumbed the screen off, my reflection staring back, tense jaw, determined eyes. The deal was a $50 million acquisition of my platform by a major tech conglomerate, one that would catapult us into the big leagues. It wasn't just money, it was validation on a scale that would silence doubters forever. But right now, in this house that smelled of old wood and faint dish soap, it felt worlds away. I poured myself a glass of water from the tap, the stream sputtering before steadying, and took a slow sip, the cool liquid doing little to quench the heat building in my chest. Why had I come? Mom's plea, sure, but deeper down, maybe I needed this closure before stepping into my new reality. As the coffee pot gurgled to life behind me, filling the air with its bitter aroma, I replayed the morning's chaos in my mind. The reluctant preparation that had gotten me here. Back in my city apartment earlier that day, I'd paced the living room, sunlight slanting through the blinds onto my unpacked suitcase. The place was modest still, by choice. Neutral walls, a second-hand couch, my laptop humming on the coffee table with open tabs of deal documents. I'd stared at the suitcase, zipper half open, clothes spilling out like they were resisting too. You don't have to go, I'd muttered to myself, flopping onto the couch, the cushions sighing under me. But the email from Ethan had been clear. Family meeting tonight. Parents' care plan. Be there. No question, just command. I rubbed my temples, fingers pressing into the pressure points, feeling the pulse of a headache forming. The deal loomed so close. Lawyers finalizing terms, like my team buzzing with excitement via Slack pings that lit up my phone like fireworks. This is huge, Paige, Alex had texted. Your baby's all grown up. I'd smiled faintly at that, but the smile faded as I thought of the drive ahead, the hours on the road replaying old hurts. I forced myself up, grabbing a hoodie from the closet, the fabric soft from too many washes, and stuffed it into the bag. Reluctance weighed every movement. Zipping the suitcase felt like sealing a fate I didn't want. In the bathroom, I splashed water on my face, droplets clinging to my lashes as I met my own gaze in the mirror. Just get through it, I whispered, wiping my face with a towel that smelled faintly of laundry detergent. The company was on the verge. Projections showed we'd hit unicorn status post-deal, my shares alone worth 8 figures. But telling the family? Not yet. Let them stew in their narrative a bit longer. I snatched my keys from the hook, the metal jangling, and headed to the rental car downstairs, engine humming to life as I pulled out into traffic. The city blurred by. Honks, pedestrians, the rhythm of urban life I'd claimed as my own. Radio on low, some indie track about breaking free playing softly. I gripped the wheel tighter on the highway, miles ticking by. Each exit sign felt like a countdown to judgment. Back in the kitchen now, as Mom clattered mugs onto a tray, I slipped my phone away, the deal's gravity pulling me back to the present. This wasn't just any family dinner. It was annual in the worst way. The one where they dissected lives over pot roast and pie, measuring success in bank balances and titles. I could already picture it. The table set with Mom's good china, steam rising from dishes, while Ethan carved the meat like he was portioning out inheritances. Lila would sip wine, dropping names of clients, and I'd sit there, fork pushing food around my plate, biting back retorts. Reluctantly, I helped Mom with the tray, my hands steadying the mugs as coffee sloshed dangerously close to the rims. Thanks, honey, she said softly, her touch on my arm lingering like she knew the storm brewing. I nodded, carrying it back to the dining room, the warmth seeping through the ceramic into my skin. Ethan and Leela were huddled over his notepad, whispering, probably adjusting their plans to accommodate my situation. Dad sat quietly, folding a napkin into precise squares, avoiding eyes. Setting the tray down with a gentle clink, I took my seat again, the chair scraping faintly. The break was over. Dinner prep would start soon, the real confrontation inching closer. My mind raced to the deal. Signatures tomorrow, freedom after. But here, I steeled myself, shoulders squaring as I picked up my mug, steam curling up like resolve. Fingers wrapped around the handle, I blew gently on the surface, ripples forming. They thought I had nothing to offer? Fine. I'd let the illusion hold a little longer, building the tension. The reluctance faded into focus. This eve of judgment was my setup. The deal my ace. I sipped the coffee, bitter and hot, mirroring the bite in my thoughts. Whatever they threw at me over dinner, I'd be ready, not just to endure, but to shatter their world. As the coffee mugs emptied, clinking softly against saucers amid the fading small talk, Mom stood up again, her movements deliberate, like she was buying time before the inevitable. Dinner's almost ready, she announced, wiping her hands on her apron, the fabric stained from years of family meals. Dad helped her in the kitchen, the sizzle of meat and clatter of plates filtering through the doorway, while Ethan and Lila exchanged glances that spoke volumes, smug, knowing. I remained seated, my empty mug cooling in my hands, the ceramic now lukewarm against my skin. The agenda talk had paused, but the real gauntlet was about to begin. The family dinner, where condescension disguised as concern would fly like arrows. I set the mug down with a gentle thud, steeling myself as the smells of roast chicken and garlic potatoes wafted in, pulling us all toward the table like a reluctant summons. We migrated to the dining area proper, chairs scraping as we settled in, Ethan at the head, naturally, Lila to his right, Mom and Dad flanking me like buffers. I smoothed the tablecloth under my palms, feeling the familiar weave, embroidered edges frayed from countless washes. Plates were passed, steam rising in curls that blurred the faces across from me momentarily. Ethan carved the chicken with precise strokes, his knife glinting under the chandelier light, portioning out pieces as if allocating worth. "Here, Paige," he said, sliding a modest slice onto my plate, his tone casual but laced with something sharper. "Don't want to overwhelm you." I gripped my fork, tines pressing into my thumb, and forced a neutral expression. The barrage started subtly, wrapped in the guise of catching up, but each word landed like a backhanded compliment designed to remind me of my place. Lila speared a potato, her fork clicking against the china, and fired the first shot. "So Paige, still doing that computer thing?" she asked, her voice light, almost playful, but her eyes narrowed slightly, scanning me like a balance sheet. She chewed slowly, waiting as if my answer would confirm what she already believed. I nodded, spearing a piece of chicken myself, the meat tender but sticking in my throat. "Yeah, freelancing mostly, keeps me busy." It wasn't a lie, but it skimmed the surface, hiding the empire beneath. Ethan chuckled, wiping his mouth with a napkin he folded neatly before setting it down. "Freelancing, huh? Must be tough in this economy. I mean, with AI taking over coding jobs left and right." He leaned back, arms crossing, his blazer creasing perfectly. "You ever think about going back to school? Get a real certification or something?" The words hung there, patronizing, his eyebrow arching just enough to sting. I clenched my jaw, feeling the muscle twitch, and took a sip of water, the glass cool against my lips. Mom interjected softly, "Ethan, let's not," but he waved her off gently. "Just looking out for her, Mom." The questions kept coming, relentless, each one probing my struggles while highlighting their triumphs. Lila swirled her wine, the red liquid catching the light as she tilted the glass. "Remember that startup you mentioned ages ago? What happened to that? Fizzled out?" She said it with a sympathetic head tilt, but her lips curved in a smirk, like she relished the confirmation. I poked at my vegetables, the fork scraping faintly, buying time. "It evolved," I replied evenly, but inside my pulse quickened. The platform she dismissed was now worth millions, users worldwide relying on it daily. Dad cleared his throat, trying to pivot. "Paige has always been creative." But Ethan jumped in. "Creative doesn't pay bills, Dad. Look, sis, if you need help with resume stuff, I know people. Entry-level positions, sure, but stable." His offer sounded generous, but the undertone screamed pity, his fingers drumming the table as if already planning my rescue. I endured it, bite by bite, the food turning flavorless as the condescension piled on. Leela leaned forward, elbows on the table, a habit Mom usually corrected, but not tonight. "Honestly, Paige, with Mom and Dad getting older, we have to think practically. Ethan's firm is booming, I'm closing deals left and right. But you? Well, we don't want to burden you." She said it with a soft smile, like a compliment, but her eyes flicked to my simple outfit, comparing it to her designer blouse. I set my knife down carefully, the metal clinking, and met her gaze. "I'm managing fine," I said, voice steady, though my foot tapped under the table, energy coiling. Ethan nodded sagely, cutting another slice for himself. "That's the spirit. But seriously, if things get tight, we can spot you. Family, right?" The backhand was clear. "You're the weak link, the one who needs saving." Mom's hand touched my arm under the table, a brief squeeze, her fingers cold and trembling slightly. Dad focused on his plate, fork pushing peas around in circles. The barrage intensified as dessert loomed. Apple pie cooling on the sideboard, its cinnamon scent clashing with the tension. "Ever consider moving back here?" Ethan asked, leaning in, his breath carrying the tang of wine. "Cheaper living, and you could help with the parents more hands-on, since, your schedule's flexible." Flexible, like unemployed. I gripped the edge of my chair, nails digging into the wood, feeling the grain. Leela added, "Yeah, and maybe network locally. Not everyone's cut out for the city grind." Her laugh was light, but it grated, her hand gesturing dismissively. I breathed deeply, chest rising and falling, the air thick. Their words weren't new, but tonight on the cusp of my deal, they hit harder, fueling the resolve I'd built. I didn't snap back, not yet. Instead I endured, letting each jab land, cataloging them in my mind like code errors to fix later. The pie was served, slices uneven, and as I took a bite, the sweetness cloying, I glanced at my phone under the table. Another text from Alex. Everything's set for tomorrow. My fingers hovered over the screen, then pocketed it. The gauntlet wasn't over, but my turn was coming. I swallowed the pie, the crust flaky but bitter now, and straightened my spine. Let them fire away. I'd absorb it all, then reflect it back tenfold. As the last crumbs of apple pie were scraped from plates, the forks clinking in a rhythm that felt too final, Ethan set his down with deliberate care, aligning it parallel to the edge like he was closing a case file. The room fell into a weighted hush. The only sound the faint tick of the grandfather clock in the hall, marking seconds like judgments. Lila folded her napkin slowly, creasing it into sharp lines before placing it beside her plate, her eyes locking onto Ethan's with a nod that said, now. Mom shifted in her seat, her chair creaking softly, while Dad stared at his empty dish, his fingers drumming a slow, uneven beat on the tablecloth. I felt the shift immediately, the air thickening, charged with the escalation I'd sensed building all evening. This wasn't just dinner winding down, it was the pivot to their real agenda, the formal verdict on my place in the family, delivered like a boardroom decision. Ethan cleared his throat, the sound sharp in the silence, and leaned forward, elbows planting firmly on the table as if staking claim. All right, let's get to the point, he said, his voice dropping an octave, authoritative, like he was addressing a jury. We've danced around it long enough. Mom and Dad's situation, it's not getting better. Medical bills, home modifications, eventually full-time care. Leela and I have run the numbers. He pulled out his notepad from earlier, flipping it open with a snap, pages rustling as he scanned his neat handwriting. Lila nodded again, her hand reaching for her wine glass, fingers wrapping around the stem tightly before taking a measured sip, the liquid swirling audibly. I gripped the arms of my chair under the table, wood smooth but unyielding, my nails pressing crescents into the varnish. The condescension from before was morphing into something colder, more calculated. He continued, eyes flicking to me briefly before settling on Mom and Dad. We've got a plan. Lila's firm has connections for premium in-home aids, top-notch, but not cheap. I'll handle the legal side, trusts and all that. We've pooled our resources, my bonus covers the down payment on modifications, Leela's investments handle ongoing costs. He paused, pen tapping the paper once, twice, the sound echoing like a gavel. But Paige, we've got to be realistic. Your situation, freelancing, instability, it's not fair to expect you to chip in financially. We've decided to structure this without relying on you. The words landed heavy, but he said them matter-of-factly, like discussing weather. Lila chimed in, setting her glass down with a soft clink. It's for the best. We don't want to stress you out more than you already are. Her tone was syrupy, concerned on the surface, but her lips pressed into a thin line afterward, betraying the finality. I felt my breath catch, chest tightening as if the room's air had thinned. Mom's hand trembled as she reached for her water, glass rattling slightly against the table before she lifted it, taking a small sip that did nothing to hide her discomfort. Dad avoided my eyes, his drumming fingers stilling abruptly, knuckles whitening as he clenched his fist loosely. The escalation built layer by layer, Ethan outlining the timeline. We'll start next month. Lila adding details on costs, it's sustainable for us too. Each sentence stripped away my role, reducing me to spectator in my own family's future. I shifted my weight, the chair groaning faintly, my foot pressing hard against the leg for stability. What exactly are you saying? I asked, voice low but steady, forcing them to spell it out. Ethan met my gaze then, his expression a mix of pity and resolve, eyebrows furrowing slightly. We're saying we're handling it, all of it. You can visit, help with emotional support if you want, but financially, you're off the hook. He leaned back, crossing his arms, the fabric of his blazer whispering. Lila nodded emphatically, her earrings swaying. It's not personal, Paige. We just can't count on unpredictable income, better to plan around certainties. The word unpredictable hung there, a dagger wrapped in logic. Mom whispered, "Kids, maybe we can talk," but Ethan cut her off gently. "Mom, it's decided." Dad finally looked up, his eyes misty, but he said nothing, just nodded once, slowly, like accepting defeat. The conversation spiraled from there, each turn ratcheting the tension higher, formalizing my exclusion like a contract being signed. Ethan pulled out printed spreadsheets, crisp pages he'd prepared, sliding one across to me, the paper whispering over the cloth, columns of figures, my name absent except in a footnote, non-contributing. I stared at it, fingers hovering before touching the edge, the ink sharp and unyielding. "This is us officially taking the lead," he said, voice firm. Lila elaborated. "We've even set up a family fund, our contributions only, no hard feelings." Her smile was tight, forced, as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, fingers lingering nervously. I crumpled the corner of the paper slightly under my thumb, the crinkle audible in the quiet. The announcement wasn't just words, it was a disownment dressed as practicality, cutting me off from responsibility, from relevance. As the weight settled, my mind raced, micro moments flashing, Ethan's pen clicking open and closed, a nervous tick betraying his composure, Lila's foot tapping under the table, heel clicking softly against the floor, Mom's napkin twisting in her lap, threads pulling loose, Dad's sigh, barely audible but deep. I pushed the spreadsheet back, the slide smooth but deliberate. "So that's it? I'm out?" My voice rose slightly, edged with the hurt I'd swallowed all night. Ethan nodded, final. "For the finances, yes, it's the smart move." The room felt smaller, walls closing in, the clocks tick louder now. This verdict, they'd planned it, formalized it, without me. My exclusion was complete, a formal cutoff that stung deeper than any insult. But in that pain, resolve hardened. My fingers flexed, releasing the chair arm, marks fading from my skin. They thought this was mercy, it was the spark for what came next. The spreadsheet lay there between us, its crumpled corner a small rebellion against the pristine order Ethan had imposed. But the silence that followed his final nod stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. Lila sipped her wine again, the glass trembling slightly in her hand now, as if even she sensed the shift in the air, thicker, heavier with unspoken finality. Mom's eyes darted between us, her fingers knotting the napkin in her lap until the fabric bunched unevenly, while Dad pushed his chair back a fraction, the legs scraping the floor in a low groan that echoed my internal churn. I sat frozen for a beat, the weight of their decision pressing down like an invisible hand on my chest, squeezing the air out. This was my deepest humiliation, not just excluded but formally disowned in the ledger of family duty, reduced to a footnote in their grand plan. My pulse thrummed in my ears, loud and insistent, drowning out the clock's tick, as anger and hurt collided in a storm I barely contained. But then, at that precise nadir, my phone vibrated sharply in my pocket, buzzing against my thigh like a lifeline thrown into the abyss. I hesitated, hand hovering over my jeans, feeling the insistent pulse through the fabric. Once, twice, 3 times, as if urgent. Ethan frowned, his brow creasing deeper. "Now's not the time for calls, Paige," he said, voice edged with irritation, leaning forward as if to reclaim control. Lila set her glass down harder than necessary, the base clinking against the wood. "Seriously, we're in the middle of something important." But I ignored them, slipping the phone out. The screen lighting up my face in the dimming room light. It was Alex, my COO, calling, not texting this time. My thumb hovered over the accept button, a microsecond of doubt flashing, answer here or step away. The humiliation peaked, their stares burning, judgmental, and I decided, right here. I swiped to answer, putting it on speaker without a word, the click audible in the quiet. "Paige, you there?" Alex's voice burst out, excited, tinny but clear. "The deal just closed early. Congrats, boss. 50 million valuation. Your shares alone are worth over 20 mil. We're popping champagne here." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, Alex's enthusiasm slicing through the tension. Ethan's pen slipped from his fingers, rolling across the table with a soft clatter before dropping to the floor, unnoticed. Lila's mouth parted slightly, her wine glass forgotten midway to her lips, a drop of red liquid beading on the rim. Mom gasped softly, hand flying to her chest, fingers splaying across her blouse as if to steady her heart. Dad's eyes widened, his chair creaking as he leaned forward, gripping the table edge until his knuckles paled. I held the phone steady, my grip firm despite the tremor in my arm, letting the revelation sink in. Alex kept going, oblivious. Media's blowing up. TechCrunch wants an interview. You're a multimillionaire now, officially. How's the family thing going? I muted the speaker quickly, but the damage, or rather the truth, was out. The scale of my success wasn't just numbers. It was the empire I'd hidden, now exploding into their carefully constructed narrative like a grenade. But I wasn't done. The external event, the call, had cracked the facade, but I needed to shatter it completely to make the reveal unforgettable. My mind raced, fingers already tapping out a text under the table to my assistant. Send the chopper, now. I'd arranged it as a contingency, a dramatic exit if things went south, parked at a nearby airfield for post-deal celebrations. Now it would serve a bigger purpose. What was that? Ethan stammered, his voice cracking for the first time, scrambling to pick up his pen but fumbling it again, the metal skittering. Lila set her glass down shakily, wine sloshing over the side, staining the tablecloth in a dark bloom. Multimillionaire? Paige, is this some joke? Her tone wavered between disbelief and accusation, her hand pressing against the table for support. I stood slowly, chair pushing back with a deliberate scrape, pocketing the phone as Alex's muted voice continued faintly. No joke, I said evenly, meeting each gaze in turn. Ethan's stunned, Lila's flickering with calculation, Mom's tearful, Dad's awed. The humiliation that had gripped me moments ago flipped into empowerment, a rush that straightened my spine. Outside, the faint whir of rotors began in the distance, growing louder, the sound vibrating through the windows like an approaching storm. They heard it too, Ethan's head snapping toward the window, curtains billowing slightly from the draft. What's that? Dad muttered, rising unsteadily, his hand steadying on the back of his chair. The helicopter's thrum built to a roar, lights piercing the dusk as it descended onto the backyard field. Our old childhood playground, now a landing pad. The downdraft rustled the trees, leaves swirling in eddies, and the house shook faintly, dishes rattling on the sideboard. I walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside with a swift tug, the fabric bunching in my fist. The sleek black chopper touched down, rotors slowing but still whipping air, my company's logo emblazoned on the side, subtle but unmistakable. Ethan joined me, face paling as realization dawned. You own that? His whisper was hoarse, hand pressing against the glass, leaving a smudge. Lila crowded in, her breath fogging the pain. How? When? Mom and Dad hovered behind, her hand clutching his arm, fingers digging in. I turned to them, the external event now visual, irrefutable. The chopper's door opening, my pilot waving casually. I've been building this for years, I said, voice calm but laced with the years of swallowed pride. While you celebrated your real successes, I created something bigger. That call? It's the confirmation. I'm not struggling, I'm soaring. The words flowed, each one a release, as the rotor noise faded to a hum. Ethan's spreadsheet lay forgotten on the table, irrelevant now. Lila's eyes darted between me and the chopper, her composure cracking, a hand running through her hair, strands falling loose. The reveal wasn't just words or a call, it was this dramatic arrival, the helicopter a symbol of the scale they'd ignored. Dad stepped closer, his voice soft. Paige. But I held up a hand, the gesture firm. The deepest humiliation had transformed, the call changing everything, the chopper sealing it. My heart pounded, not with hurt, but triumph. They scrambled mentally, but I stood tall, ready for the confrontation to come. The helicopter's rotors wound down to a low whine, the blades slicing the air in slowing arcs that sent residual gusts rippling through the backyard grass, bending it like waves under an invisible tide. I stood by the window, curtains still clutched in my fist, the fabric warm from my grip as the family's stunned faces reflected back at me in the glass. Ethan's mouth agape, his notepad forgotten on the floor where it had slid during the scramble to the window. Lila's hand pressed against the pane, fingers splayed as if to push away the reality landing outside. Mom and Dad hovering behind, her arm linked through his, both wide-eyed like they'd seen a ghost from their own past. The pilot hopped out, giving a casual thumbs up toward the house, his silhouette sharp against the landing lights. The reveal had hit its mark, but now came the scramble, their frantic attempts to rewrite the narrative on the fly, hypocrisy bubbling up as they tripped over apologies and excuses. I released the curtain, letting it fall back with a soft swish, and turned to face them. My stance steady, arms loose at my sides, but fists lightly clenched, nails biting into palms just enough to keep me grounded. Ethan recovered first, or tried to, straightening his blazer with a tug that did nothing to smooth the creases of shock on his face. Paige? Holy crap, that's yours? Like, actually yours? His voice cracked on the last word, pitching higher than his usual baritone, as he took a step toward me, hand outstretched like he might pat my shoulder in congratulations. But it was too late for that. The gesture felt hollow, rehearsed from boardrooms where deals flipped alliances. Lila blinked rapidly, her mascara smudging slightly at the corners as she lowered her hand from the window, wiping it on her skirt absent-mindedly. Wait, multimillionaire? From that little app thing? How didn't we know? She laughed nervously, the sound brittle and forced, echoing off the dining room walls. Mom murmured, "Oh, honey," her free hand reaching out but stopping midway, fingers curling back uncertainly, while Dad nodded slowly. His eyes misty, but a small smile tugging at his lips. The first genuine one I'd seen all night. They scrambled then, words tumbling out in a rush to bridge the chasm I'd just exposed. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, fingers digging in as if to massage away the tension. This changes everything. I mean, wow, sis, we had no idea. If we'd known. He trailed off, glancing at the spreadsheet on the table, its figures now laughable in the face of my reality. Lila jumped in, her voice brighter, almost eager. Exactly. We can redo the plan. Your input, hell, your funds could make this so much better. Premium everything for Mom and Dad. She gestured vaguely toward them, her ring catching the light in a flash that felt desperate. Mom squeezed Dad's arm tighter, her knuckles paling, and whispered, "That would be wonderful." But her eyes pleaded with me, a mix of hope and regret. Dad cleared his throat, voice gruff. "Proud of you, kiddo. Always knew you had it in you." The apologies layered in subtly at first. Ethan's, "Sorry if we came off harsh," Lila's, "We were just worried, you know." But they rang false, laced with the same condescension now twisted into backpedaling. I let them talk, standing there with the helicopter's hum vibrating faintly through the floorboards, my breathing even as I catalogued every shift, Ethan's foot shuffling, toe scuffing the rug, Lila's hands twisting together, nails picking at cuticles, Mom's lower lip trembling slightly. The scramble intensified, Ethan pulling out his phone, thumbs flying as if to Google my company right then, muttering, "This is huge. TechCrunch mentioned we need to celebrate." Lila nodded vigorously, her hair bouncing. "Absolutely, forget the earlier stuff, that was before we knew, you're the success story now." The hypocrisy dripped from every word. They'd built years on dismissing me, celebrating only wealth they understood, and now, with proof hovering outside, they flipped like switches. Dad added softly, "We should have listened more," but even that felt prompted by the moment, not genuine reflection. Finally I raised a hand, the motion simple but commanding, cutting through their chatter like a blade. The room fell silent again, save for the distant rotor whir. "Stop," I said calmly, voice level, though my heart hammered with the release of pent-up truth. I stepped closer to the table, picking up the spreadsheet with deliberate slowness, the paper crinkling in my fingers as I held it up. "This, your practical plan that cut me out because I was unpredictable? That's hypocrisy at its finest." Ethan's face flushed, his mouth opening, but I continued, folding the paper in half with a sharp crease. "For years, you ignored my achievements, high school awards, college internships, my first platform because they didn't fit your mold of success, wealth and status, right? Ethan's deals, Lila's funds. But mine? Cute hobbies." I set the folded paper down with a soft thud, meeting Ethan's eyes. "You demanded I step up, then dismissed me without asking. Now, because I have money, more than you imagined, you want in? Apologies only after the helicopter lands?" Lila shifted, her chair creaking as she leaned back. "That's not fair. We didn't know." But her voice wavered, eyes dropping to her lap where her fingers nodded. I turned to her, calm but unflinching. "Exactly. You didn't bother to know. Assumed I was failing because I didn't flaunt it like you. Backhanded compliments at every dinner, pitying looks, and tonight, officially disowning me from family duties." Mom whimpered softly. "Paige, please," her hand covering her mouth, tears welling. Dad reached for her, his arm wrapping around her shoulders, pulling her close. Ethan tried again. "We can fix this, start over." But I shook my head, the motion firm. No, you exposed yourselves. Success to you is only valid if it's visible, if it benefits you. I've built mine in spite of that. Quietly, authentically. Your scramble now, it's not about me, it's about what I can provide. The exposure hung there, raw and unfiltered, as I let the words settle. Ethan's shoulders slumped, his blazer suddenly looking too big. Lila bit her lip, a tear streaking her cheek, smudging makeup further. Mom sobbed quietly, Dad patting her back rhythmically, his own eyes downcast. I felt a pang. Not regret, but the ache of what could have been. But it fueled my exit. I grabbed my duffel bag from the corner, slinging it over my shoulder with a heft that felt liberating. I'm contributing to Mom and Dad's care, directly, through a trust I'll set up, but on my terms, without your input. I headed for the door, pausing at the threshold, hand on the knob, cool brass under my palm. Think about why it took a helicopter for you to see me. With that, I stepped out, the night air crisp against my skin, rotors spinning up again as I approached the chopper. The door opened welcomingly, and I climbed in, buckling the harness with steady hands. As we lifted off, the house shrinking below, lights warm but distant, I exhaled deeply, the vibration of flight humming through me. The powerful exit wasn't just leaving. It was rejecting their hypocrisy, closing the door on their narrative for good. The helicopter lifted smoothly into the night sky, the ground falling away as the house's lights blurred into pinpricks below, the rotor's steady thrum vibrating through my seat like a heartbeat finally slowing after a sprint. I leaned back against the leather, the harness snug across my chest, and exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, the cool air from the vents brushing my face. The pilot glanced over, his headset mic dipping as he said, "Back to the city?" I nodded, fingers unclenching from the armrest, the tension easing knot by knot. The dramatic exit was behind me, the family's stunned faces framed in the window as we ascended, Ethan's hand still pressed to the glass, Lila's silhouette frozen. But as the landscape shifted to dark fields and distant city glow, my mind turned not to them, but to the people who'd always seen me, my chosen allies, the ones who'd built me up without needing proof of success. Tonight, I'd contrast the toxicity I'd just escaped with the warmth waiting ahead, a genuine gathering that felt like home in ways blood never. We touched down on a helipad atop my company's building in the city, the landing gentle, skids kissing concrete with a soft jolt. I thanked the pilot, unbuckling and stepping out into the crisp urban air, city sounds rising, distant horns, the hum of traffic below. My phone buzzed with messages from the team, but I pocketed it, heading straight for the elevator, the doors whooshing open with a ding that echoed in the quiet rooftop. Down to the lobby, then out to the street, where I'd arranged a low-key meetup at our favorite spot, a cozy rooftop bar a few blocks away, the kind with string lights and mismatched chairs, no pretension. Alex had texted earlier, "Team's here. Come celebrate properly." I walked briskly, sneakers padding on sidewalk cracks, the weight of the duffel on my shoulder lighter now. The family dinner's poison still lingered, their cutting words, the spreadsheet's cold exclusion, but stepping into this new space with people who chose me daily washed it away like rain on grime. The bar's entrance was tucked away, a narrow staircase lit by fairy lights winding up to the roof. I climbed, each step shedding more of the evening's residue, the faint music growing louder, soft jazz mingling with laughter. At the top, the door opened to a warm scene. String lights draped overhead like stars, casting a golden glow on wooden tables scattered with half-empty glasses and snack plates. My allies were there, Alex, my CO, lounging in a wicker chair, his tie loosened, Mia, our lead developer, cross-legged on a bench, fiddling with a napkin origami, Jamal, the marketing whiz, gesturing animatedly with a beer in hand, and Sarah, our finance guru, smiling as she spotted me first. "There she is, the queen herself," Sarah called, standing to pull me into a hug, her arms strong and sincere, perfume a light citrus that cut through the night's chill. The group erupted in cheers, glasses raised, the clink bright and unforced. I dropped my duffel by the table, sinking into a chair they pulled up, the cushion soft and welcoming. Alex slid a drink my way, a craft beer, label peeling slightly where his thumb had worried it. "To the deal," he toasted, his grin wide, eyes crinkling at the corners. "And to you, Paige, we did it." We clinked glasses, the cool fizz bubbling up as I took a sip, the bitterness refreshing after the pie's cloying sweetness at dinner. Here, the conversation flowed without barbs, no probing questions about stability, no backhanded digs. Mia leaned in, her elbow on the table, chin in hand. "Tell us everything. How'd the family take it? You dropped the bomb, right?" I nodded, recounting the helicopter reveal in broad strokes, my voice steady but laced with the raw edge of the confrontation. They listened intently, Jamal's brow furrowing in empathy, Sarah's hand squeezing my arm midway through, fingers warm and grounding. The contrast hit me viscerally, each micro-moment highlighting what I'd left behind. At the family table, Ethan's carving knife had portioned out judgment. Here, Jamal passed a plate of nachos, cheese stretching in gooey strings, saying, "Dig in, no one's counting contributions." Lila's smirks had sliced like paper cuts. Mia's laugh was genuine, head thrown back as she joked, "Helicopter, boss move." Wish I'd seen their faces. Mom and Dad's silent complicity had ached. Alex's nod was affirming, his hand clapping my shoulder firmly. "You've earned this. We saw it from day one." The warmth enveloped me, the way Sarah refilled my glass without asking, the liquid glugging softly. How Jamal sketched deal ideas on a napkin, pen scratching eagerly, including me seamlessly. No hierarchies based on bank accounts, just mutual respect, built on late nights debugging code together, celebrating small wins with high fives and takeout. As the night deepened, stars peeking through the city haze, the genuine moment unfolded further, a shared vulnerability that the family dinner had lacked. Mia opened up about her own family struggles, voice softening as she twisted her napkin, shreds falling like confetti. They never got the tech thing either. But here, we get each other. Nods around the table, glasses raised again in silent solidarity. I felt seen, not for the millions, but for the grind, the passion. Jamal shared a story of his first failed pitch, mimicking the investor's dismissal with exaggerated gestures, arms waving, drawing laughs that loosened the last knots in my chest. Sarah, ever practical, pulled out her phone to show projections post-deal, screen glowing as she scrolled, her finger tapping points enthusiastically. "This is us, Paige. Not just you, we built it." The words landed soft, affirming, a balm to the family's, "You're out." The rooftop breeze picked up, rustling the lights overhead, their sway casting dancing shadows on our faces. I leaned back, beer in hand, the bottle cool against my palm, absorbing the ease. No toxic undercurrents, just authenticity. The family had measured love in dollars and status, their dinner a battlefield of exclusion. This was a haven, chosen bonds stronger than biology. Alex caught my eye, raising his glass one more time. "To real family." We toasted, the clink resonant, and for the first time that night, I smiled fully, the warmth spreading from my chest outward. The contrast wasn't just events, it was worlds. One poisoned by misunderstanding, the other healing with honesty. As laughter bubbled up again, I set my glass down, the condensation leaving a ring on the wood, and let myself sink into it, the genuine moment wrapping around me like a promise kept. The helicopter banked gently over the city skyline. Lights twinkling below, like scattered diamonds on black velvet, as the adrenaline from the confrontation ebbed into a quiet hum matching the engine's purr. I adjusted the headset, the foam cushions pressing softly against my ears, muting the world outside, and watched the pilot's hands steady on the controls, fingers tapping a light rhythm on the yoke. The exit had been powerful, leaving their hypocrisy exposed in the rear view, but as we flew, my thoughts drifted to the stark difference between the family I'd just left and the one I'd chosen, the allies who'd seen my worth long before the millions. Tonight wasn't over. I had a standing invite to a late-night unwind with my team, a genuine moment of celebration that would heal the wounds from the toxic dinner, reminding me why blood didn't define bonds. We landed on a private pad near the office district, the skids touching down with a soft thud that jarred me back to the present. I unbuckled, thanking the pilot with a nod, his gloved hand waving casually as I stepped out, the downdraft tussling my hair. The night air was cooler here, carrying the faint scent of rain on concrete, and I slung my duffel higher on my shoulder, the strap digging in slightly as I walked to the waiting car, arranged by Alex, always one step ahead. Sliding into the back seat, the leather creaking under me, I texted the group, "On my way. Need a drink and real talk." Responses flooded in immediately, emojis of cheers, thumbs up, each ping a small affirmation. The drive was short, traffic thinning late, and I stared out the window, streetlights streaking by, contrasting the family's dim dining room glow with this vibrant pulse. The spot was a hidden gem, a loft-style bar in an old warehouse, entrance marked by a simple neon sign flickering open. I pushed through the door, the hinge squeaking faintly, and climbed the stairs, each step echoing my rising anticipation. At the top, the space opened up. Exposed brick walls, low-hanging bulbs casting warm pools of light, jazz playing softly from speakers. My allies were clustered at a corner booth, the wooden table cluttered with pitchers of beer and bowls of pretzels, crumbs scattered like evidence of easy camaraderie. Alex spotted me first, his chair scraping back as he stood, arms opening wide. "The legend returns," he boomed, pulling me into a bear hug, his shirt rumpled from a long day, smelling faintly of coffee. Mia clapped, her hands coming together sharply while Jamal raised a glass, liquid sloshing near the rim, and Sarah scooted over, patting the seat beside her, the vinyl sticking slightly to my jeans as I sat. The warmth hit immediately, a far cry from the dinner's chill. No judgmental stares, just genuine smiles that reached eyes. Alex poured me a beer from the pitcher, foam spilling over the side, dripping onto the table where he wiped it with his sleeve absent-mindedly. "Spill it. What happened after the call?" he asked, leaning in, elbows on the table, chin propped on his fist. I took a long sip, the cold bubbles fizzing on my tongue, and recounted the helicopter stunt. My voice gaining strength as I described Ethan's dropped pen rolling away, Lila's wine stain blooming. They reacted viscerally. Mia gasped, hand covering her mouth, fingers splaying. Jamal pounded the table lightly, pretzels jumping. Sarah shook her head slowly, her earrings swaying. "That's cold-blooded brilliant," Jamal said, his laugh deep and rolling, contrasting Ethan's forced chuckles at my hobbies. We dove deeper, the conversation weaving between the toxic and the true, each micro-exchange building the contrast. At the family table, words had been weapons, Ethan's pen tapping like a timer on my inadequacy. Here, Mia sketched on a napkin with a borrowed pen, doodling a cartoon helicopter, her strokes quick and light, passing it to me with a grin. "Your new logo?" she teased, and I folded it carefully, tucking it into my pocket, the paper crinkling warmly. Lila's smirks had cut. Sarah's touch on my arm was supportive, fingers squeezing gently as she said, "They never deserved your light." Mom and Dad's silence had enabled. Alex refilled my glass without fanfare, the pour steady, saying, "We're your safety net, always have been." The group's energy flowed freely. No one dominating like Ethan, just shared stories. Jamal admitting his own sibling rivalries, voice softening as he twisted a pretzel, crumbs falling. Mia sharing how her parents dismissed her coding passion, her foot tapping under the table in remembered frustration. The genuine moment deepened as the night wore on, pints emptying and refilling, the bartender calling last round with a distant clink of glasses. We huddled closer, chairs pulled in with scrapes, forming a tight circle against the cooling air. Sarah pulled out her phone, screen glowing as she showed a team photo from our first office, a cramped space with pizza boxes stacked, all of us grinning exhaustedly. "Remember this? Before the millions." Her finger traced the image, lingering on my face. I nodded, throat tightening slightly, the memory a balm to the dinner's erasure. Unlike the family's spreadsheet excluding me, here inclusion was effortless. Jamal suggesting, "Next project we all get equity bumps," his hand gesturing inclusively, palm up. No apologies laced with self-interest, just raw honesty, like when Alex confessed, "I doubted the platform early on, sorry for that," his eyes meeting mine directly, no deflection. The contrast crystallized in small actions. Ethan's crossed arms had barricaded, Alex's arm around my shoulder now was open, reassuring. Lila's manicured nails clicking judgment, Mia's unpolished ones drumming excitement on the table. Mom's wrung napkin of worry, Sarah's steady hand passing me a water to pace the beer, glass cool and thoughtful. Dad's averted gaze, Jamal's direct stare as he toasted, "To chosen family, stronger than blood." We clinked, the sound resonant, beer spilling in friendly chaos. I felt the healing seep in, the toxic dinner's sting fading against this authenticity. No status games, just people who'd celebrated my code commits, not my bank balance. As the bar lights dimmed, signaling close, I leaned back, chair creaking, content in the warmth. The biological ties had fractured under misunderstanding, these chosen ones mended with unwavering support. The moment wasn't just a gathering. It was affirmation, a world where I belonged without proving a thing. The bar's closing lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the rooftop as the bartender called out a gentle, "Last call," his voice carrying over the dying jazz notes. I lingered a moment longer, glass empty but hands still wrapped around it, the condensation slick under my fingers absorbing the last echoes of laughter from my team, Alex's deep chuckle, Mia's quick wit wrapping up a final joke. We hugged goodbye, arms brief but firm. Promises of, "See you at the office tomorrow," hanging in the air like confetti. I descended the stairs alone, steps echoing softly, the night wrapping around me as I hailed a cab outside, the door handle cool and sticky from urban grime. The ride home was quiet, city streets blurring past, my reflection in the window superimposed over neon signs. A face calmer now, the toxic dinner's residue scrubbed clean by genuine connection. But as the cab pulled up to my apartment building, the buzz of my phone in my pocket reminded me. The aftermath wasn't over. Texts from Ethan and Lila had started trickling in during the bar chat, ignored until now. I paid the driver, bills crinkling as I handed them over, and stepped into the lobby, elevator doors closing with a soft ding, ascending to my floor, where the real work began, handling the fallout, building my fortress of new boundaries. Inside my apartment, the door clicking shut behind me, I dropped the duffel with a thud onto the hardwood floor, kicking off my sneakers one by one, toes flexing against the cool planks. The space was mine, minimalist with a large window overlooking the skyline, desk cluttered with dual monitors still humming from earlier remote checks. I sank onto the couch, the cushions yielding under me, and pulled out my phone, screen lighting up with notifications. Ethan's first. "Paige, we need to talk." That was intense. "Call me." Lila's followed, "Shocked but happy for you." "Let's discuss parents' plan now?" Mom's was softer. "Honey, please come back soon, we love you." Dad's simple, proud. I scrolled through them, thumb pausing on each, feeling the pull of old habits to respond, explain, smooth over. But no. The humiliation, the hypocrisy, they'd earned this distance. I set the phone face down on the coffee table, the muffled vibrate of another incoming message ignored, and leaned back, arms crossing over my chest, breathing deeply as I mapped out my response. Boundaries weren't walls, they were rules, clear and enforced to protect the peace I'd claimed. The next morning dawned bright, sunlight slanting through blinds and stripes across the floor, my alarm beeping insistently until I swiped it off. Coffee brewed, the machine gurgling as grounds steeped, aroma filling the air while I sat at the kitchen counter, laptop open, drafting an email, formal, unemotional like a business proposal. Fingers tapped keys steadily, the clack rhythmic. "Regarding last night, I appreciate the outreach, but actions have consequences. For years, you've dismissed my life and contributions. The reveal changes nothing about that history." I paused, sipping the hot brew, mug warming my palms, steam curling up. "I'll fund Mom and Dad's care through a separate trust, managed by professionals, no joint decisions. Contact will be limited, monthly check-ins via email only, no unscheduled calls or visits." Harsh? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. I hit send, the whoosh sound final, then blocked their numbers temporarily, screen confirming with a pop-up. The aftermath handling started with control, my terms not theirs. But they pushed as expected. By midday at the office, glass walls buzzing with post-deal energy, team high-fiving over charts, my assistant flagged forwarded voicemails. Ethan's voice clipped. "This is ridiculous, Paige. Family doesn't email." Lila's pleading, "We can apologize in person, dinner next week." I listened on speaker in my office, door closed, leaning against the desk, arms folded, the wood edge pressing into my thighs. Each message tested the fortress, but I held firm, replying via email only. Boundaries are non-negotiable. Respect them or communication stops. Fingers hovered over the keyboard before adding, "Therapy for all might help unpack why it took wealth for you to value me." Send. The pushback intensified, Mom's email forwarded by Dad trembling in its typos, "Please don't shut us out." My heart twinged, fingers drumming the desk as I read. But I responded gently yet firmly, "I'm not shutting out, I'm protecting in. Visits on my schedule, starting small." The establishment of rules felt like laying bricks, each one solidifying the structure. Afternoon brought more, Ethan showing up unannounced at the office lobby, security buzzing me. "A Mr. Harper here," says family. I gripped the phone receiver tighter, nail digging into the plastic. "Send him away, no entry without appointment." Through the glass, I watched from upstairs, him gesturing animatedly at the desk, face reddening before turning on his heel, door swinging shut behind him. Lila tried social media, a DM sliding in. Congrats on the deal. Saw the news. Can we meet? I archived it unanswered, then adjusted privacy settings, cursor clicking through options until family accounts were muted. The aftermath wasn't a one-off, it was ongoing, each attempt a test I met with consistency. No yelling, just enforcement. At home that evening, cooking stir-fry, veggies sizzling in the pan, spatula scraping, I reflected, this wasn't revenge, it was self-preservation, reclaiming agency from years of condescension. Over the following days, the fortress solidified through small enforcements. A package arrived. Wine from Lila, note attached. Truce? I returned it unopened, label scratching under my pen as I wrote nunnely. Not yet. Ethan's email barrage slowed after my auto-reply, this inbox for care updates only. Mom and Dad adapted slower, their calls rerouted to voicemail. I reviewed weekly, responding in writing, love you but space needed. Fingers trembled slightly the first time, deleting a draft too soft, rewriting firmer. The rules extended inward too. Therapy sessions booked, calendar ping reminding me, where I unpacked the hurt, therapist's pen scratching notes as I paced the virtual room. Boundaries honor your worth, she said, and I nodded, screen reflecting my resolved face. By week's end, a tentative peace emerged. They complied, emails shortening to essentials, parents' doc appointment went well. I replied briefly, attaching trust fund details, PDF icon clicking open for review. The handling wasn't cold, it was calibrated, allowing healing without reopening wounds. Sitting on my balcony one night, city hum below, wine glass stem twirling between fingers, I felt the fortress's strength. Not isolating but empowering. The aftermath had been navigated, rules engaged like gears locking into place. No more enduring, now engaging on my terms, the new dynamic, a shield forged from the fire they'd lit. The balcony railing was cool under my forearms as I leaned against it, the city sprawl stretching out below like a living map of possibilities, lights flickering in rhythms that mirrored my steadying thoughts. The wine in my glass had warmed from my hand, the stem still twirling idly between my fingers as I reflected on the boundaries I'd set. Firm lines that protected not just me, but the space to build something meaningful. The aftermath with the family had settled into a manageable quiet, their emails now sparse and respectful, but the real shift came in how I channeled the energy from that confrontation. No longer defined by their narrative, I turned inward, realizing my success wasn't just personal vindication, it was a tool for legacy, one I'd reclaim on my terms. This internal realization hit fully that night. Staring at the horizon, the Harper name had been tied to Ethan and Leela's corporate climbs, but I'd redefine it through impact, starting with a project that honored my roots without their input. It crystallized the next morning over breakfast, sunlight filtering through the kitchen window onto my counter, where a half-eaten bagel sat beside my laptop, crumbs dotting the keys. I'd woken with purpose, the balcony's quiet resolve carrying over as I brewed coffee, the machine hissing steam that fogged the mug briefly. Sitting down, I opened a new document, fingers hovering before typing, Harper Tech Foundation, empowering underserved innovators. The idea had simmered for months, born from my own struggles, but now, post-deal with resources at my fingertips, it felt urgent. This wasn't abstract, it was a concrete initiative to fund tech education and startups in rural areas like my hometown, places where success meant stable jobs, clear, not bold ventures. I typed outlines, scholarships for coding boot camps, grants for young entrepreneurs, mentorship programs linking city pros with small-town dreamers. Each keystroke clicked with intention, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. The family name? I'd reclaim it not through revenge but by attaching it to positive change, overshadowing their status chasing with genuine uplift. The realization deepened as I fleshed it out, pacing the living room, socks sliding on the hardwood, phone in hand as I voice-noted ideas. Make it personal. Start with upstate New York, expand nationally. My voice echoed slightly off the walls, firm and excited. Why this? Because the family's dismissal had roots in that mold. Wealth as status, not service. Ethan paraded deals that lined pockets, Lila's funds chased returns. Me, I'd use my millions to seed futures, but proving the name could mean more. I sat back at the desk, scrolling contacts, thumb pausing on Alex's name. A quick call, Hey, let's pivot some deal proceeds to a foundation. Focus on tech access for overlooked communities. His response was immediate, enthusiastic. Brilliant, Paige. I'll draft the legal. The line crackled faintly, but his support grounded the vision. This internal pivot wasn't fleeting, it was a reclamation, turning pain into purpose, the Harper legacy mind to reshape. By afternoon, the plan gained momentum. I emailed my lawyer, attaching the outline, fingers drumming the desk as the attachment uploaded, bar filling slowly. Set up as a nonprofit, initial endowment from my shares. Her reply pinged back. On it. Tax benefits look good. I leaned back in the chair, wheels creaking, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily. The realization sank deeper. This wasn't about erasing the family, but transcending them. Their Harper was suits and spreadsheets, mine would be code camps in community centers, laptops for kids like I once was, dreaming in a peeling paint house. I imagined the impact. A teen in my hometown building an app that solves local problems, crediting the foundation. My chest tightened with emotion, not anger now, but fulfillment, hands clasping together in my lap, knuckles brushing. The day unfolded around this core idea, each action building on the realization. I researched similar orgs, browser tabs multiplying, notes on grants, partnerships, fingers scrolled mouse wheels, clicking links, the screen's glow reflecting in my eyes. A call to Mia. Design a logo, something empowering, not flashy. Her laugh over the line. On it, circuit boards meets roots. The conversation flowed, her keyboard tapping in the background as she sketched digitally. This was reclamation in motion, using success to create ripples, the family name synonymous with opportunity, not condescension. Dad's quiet pride from childhood flickered in memory, his encouragement for my early coding now amplified through this. I stood, stretching arms overhead, vertebrae popping softly, feeling the weight lift further. Evening brought refinement. I cooked dinner, pasta boiling in a pot, steam rising as I stirred sauce, spoon clinking the pan. Laptop open on the counter, I revised the mission statement, reclaiming innovation for all, one code line at a time. The words felt right, cursor deleting and rephrasing until precise. This internal process was solitary but powerful, no family input needed. Their exclusion mirrored how they'd sidelined me, but now it empowered. A text from Sarah, budget projections attached, scalable to $5 million first year. I opened the file, numbers scrolling, my fork pausing mid-bite, sauce dripping back to the plate. The figures solidified it. Impact measurable, legacy tangible. As night fell, I stepped back onto the balcony, same spot as before, but transformed. The city hummed below, my wine replaced with tea, mug steaming in the cooler air. The realization fully bloomed. Success wasn't the helicopter or the deal, it was this. Using it to heal old divides, not just personally, but broadly. The Harper name on foundation plaques, scholarships in my honor, stories of changed lives. Fingers traced the railing's edge, metal smooth, grounding the vision. No more living in their shadow. I'd cast my own, brighter, inclusive. The positive impact wasn't hypothetical. It started here, in this quiet determination, reclaiming what was mine all along. The foundation's launch event was a modest affair, held in a community center back in upstate New York. Not the flashy venue Ethan might have chosen, but a simple hall with folding chairs arranged in rows, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the faint mustiness of old carpets. I'd driven up that morning, the highway miles blurring as I rehearsed my speech mentally, hands gripping the wheel, knuckles paling slightly on curves. This wasn't about show. It was the culmination of reclaiming my legacy, a quiet act that tied back to the child I'd been in that same town, coding on a clunky family computer while siblings chased conventional paths. Now, with the deal's proceeds seeding the Harper Tech Foundation, I stood at the podium, microphone humming softly as I adjusted it, the stand cool under my fingers. Locals filled the seats. Teachers, parents, a few wide-eyed kids clutching notebooks, their faces expectant, not judgmental. I started speaking, voice steady at first, then warming as words flowed. The Harper name means innovation for everyone, not just the elite, I said, glancing at the banner behind me, letters bold but unpretentious. I shared snippets of my journey, the dismissed achievements, the hidden build, the helicopter reveal, not for drama but to illustrate. Worth isn't external validation. Applause rippled through, hands clapping in uneven waves, a few standing ovations from the back. Afterward, mingling over punch, a young girl approached, her ponytail swinging as she fidgeted with the bracelet. "I want to code apps too," she whispered, eyes bright. I knelt slightly, meeting her gaze, and handed her a foundation pamphlet, paper crisp in her small hands. "You already can, start here." Her smile, gap-toothed and genuine, mirrored the peace settling in me. Driving back that evening, sunset painting the sky in oranges that reflected off the rearview mirror, I let the final reflection unfold. Windows down, wind rushing in with a whoosh that tousled my hair, carrying the scent of pine from roadside trees. The family's misunderstandings, the years of condescension, they'd shaped me, but no longer defined me. My worth, it was internal, forged in those solitary coding nights, the aha moments alone in coffee shops, the resilience that turned invisibility into empire. I flexed my fingers on the wheel, feeling the calluses from keyboards past, a tactile reminder. Success wasn't the money or the foundation, it was the self-validation that bloomed from within, independent of applause or apologies. Stopping at a rest area, engine ticking cool as I stepped out, stretching legs on gravel that crunched underfoot. Leaning against the car, arms crossed, I stared at the fading light. Ethan and Lila's scramble post-reveal, Mom and Dad's tentative outreach, they sought reconciliation on new terms, but I'd found peace without it. Boundaries held, allowing space for this internal harmony. The realization wasn't sudden, it built through each step. The secret built, the reveal, the foundation's impact. My value stemmed from authenticity, the drive that persisted despite shade. A bird called overhead, wings flapping in silhouette against the dusk, free and unburdened. I felt that too, untethered from their narrative, rooted in my own. Back on the road, headlights cutting through gathering dark, radio low with some acoustic tunes strumming softly. The peace was tangible, a quiet in my chest where turmoil once churned. No more proving, just being. The Harper legacy I'd reclaimed wasn't about outshining them, but illuminating paths for others, a cycle of positivity that honored the overlooked kid I'd been. Arriving home, key turning in the lock with a click, apartment lights flicking on to reveal the familiar, desk waiting, foundation files open on screen. I sat, chair wheeling closer, and reviewed applications already trickling in, mouse clicking through stories mirroring mine. Fingers paused on one, a rural teen's essay on tech dreams. Approving it, the submit button pressing with finality, I smiled faintly. This was self-validation. Worth internal, peace profound, a full circle closed, not with confrontation, but creation. The wind whipped through the open car window on that drive back, carrying away the last remnants of doubt like leaves in autumn. I'd shattered their narrative, not with anger, but with truth. And in doing so, found a deeper healing than any apology could offer. The family dynamic shifted. Emails from Ethan and Lila came sporadically now, laced with cautious respect, while Mom and Dad's calls, when I allowed them, focused on small joys rather than old wounds. But the real change was in me. No longer seeking their validation, I poured energy into the foundation, watching it grow. First, scholarships awarded, kids' faces lighting up in photos from coding camps. It wasn't perfect. Holidays remained tense, boundaries tested, but I navigated with calm, knowing my worth was mine alone. So what do you think? Did I reveal enough to heal, or should I have kept the secret longer? Drop a comment below sharing your take, or tell me about a time you flipped the script on family expectations. Your stories inspire me, and who knows, maybe they'll spark the next big change. Don't forget to like if this resonated, subscribe for more tales of triumph over toxicity, and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss what's next. Remember, your value isn't in others' eyes, it's in your own heart. Keep building, keep shining.